Well, you might be wondering to yourself, okay, Kelly, well, that's all fine and great to talk about the 4 essential elements of a valid contract, and then to talk about what happens if something occurs in the future, to call into question the validity of that contract, rendering the status to be voidable. And it's all fine and well that you've talked about the statute of frauds, stating that certain real estate contracts must be in writing in order to be enforceable in a court of law. But how do you even get into a contract in the first place? You may be wondering. Well, let's see if you can guess. What do you think you need in order to start the process of contract formation? You need a proposal, don't you? You want to propose something to another party. That proposal is called an offer. You're saying, I propose the following, blah, 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 blah. Well, in real estate class, in Unit 9 on basic contract law, that proposal is called an offer. So we need to start with an offer. The individual who is offering is called, get ready, the offer or. The OR at the end of a word in real estate class indicates somebody is giving something. So the OR is the giver. I wish it really went together like the giver. We might even have to pretend. So the offer or is the giver. The offer or gives more. So pretend like you're lifting something up that's real big and heavy and you're laying it down. The offer or gives more. Now, the person who's on the other end of that, the receiving end of that, is called the offeree. So in real estate class, when a word ends with 2 E's, that indicates that somebody is getting something, they're receiving something. Not unlike my favorite receivers, Chase Claypool with the Steelers, or Juju Smith-Schuster's Go Steelers. Okay, come on. So the offeree receives. One way you can remember it would go like this. Let's get kinesthetic. Here we go. The offer or gives more. The offeree receives, and usually because they receive something, how do they feel? Happy. Offer or gives more. Offeree receives, go Steelers, and I feel happy. So I hope that was helpful. All right, so we need an offer. Then the offeree needs to accept the offer. This is the very, very basics. Okay. The offeree has to accept the offer. And usually that's where students will stop. They'll be like, okay, we need an offer. We need to accept the offer. If you really think about it, you know there's one more baby step that needs to happen. And what is that? We need to communicate acceptance back to the other side or back to the offer or. Think of it as that ZZ Top move. Remember that ZZ Top move where they go like this? Right? Okay, so let's ZZ Top it. Let's do. So we've got the 3 steps of contract formation. We need an offer. We need acceptance of the offer. Let's go ZZ Top. And then we need to communicate that acceptance back to the other side. Once we've done that, people, we've hit contract formation. Put your hands together like this and then try to pull them apart. This is an old Roger Cumbie trick, the founder of this school from the mid-90s. And he would always symbolize contract formation in this way. Because why? Because if you try to pull your hands apart, it's really difficult. So being in a contract is a big deal, y'all. So if you break it, that's going to be a problem. Here you are. You're in a contract. If you break it, that's called a breach of contract. We say break in real life, but it's called a breach of contract. And there are consequences for breaching or breaking a contract. And I'll get into those consequences in just a minute. But once we have a contract formed, there are lots of different contracts when it comes to real estate, which will be reviewed again in Unit 10. But contracts could have certain provisions in them. Different types of contracts are used for different purposes, especially in real estate. We have a contract for residential sales, a contract for vacant land sales. We have a backup contract that we can use. We've got a variety of contracts. So in real estate, there are different types of contracts that can be used for different types of properties. Just as a heads up, there's a contract for residential sales, a different contract form to use for vacant land, a different contract form to use for commercial property, a different contract form to use for new construction, and it goes on and on and on. Now, if you choose to join the board of realtors and become a realtor, you will have access to hundreds of these pre-printed fill in the blank forms at your fingertips. So, geez, that alone is worth the money, plus all the other things you get for becoming an actual realtor. If you are not a realtor, you will need to speak with an attorney or something like that to put together contract language. Why? Because real estate agents are not allowed to create contract language. All we're allowed to do is fill in the blanks of prepared, pre-printed, prepared forms that we can fill in the blanks. That's all we're allowed to do. There is an exception. Get ready. She pauses for dramatic effect. There is an exception. A real estate agent may write or draft, is the term, may write or draft contract language if he, she, they happens to be a direct party to that contract. So if you're buying or selling your own home, you could change the contract language. You could cross stuff out. You could add stuff. Not that that's wise to do without consulting an attorney, but you could because you're a direct party to the contract. In an agency agreement between you and your buyer or your seller, you can draft contract language. Why? Because you are a direct party to that contract. Very good. All right. Now, also contracts may have certain conditions or contingencies attached to them as well. A condition might be, an example could be, I'm going to buy your house on the condition that you fix the roof by whatever, September 30th. If that contingency, that condition is not met, then the buyer gets to back out of the contract without penalty. Without penalty means they get all their money back. If they put any money up, they get their money back. Earnest money, due diligence money, so on. You can also, so you can have contingencies and conditions on a contract. You could also, if the contract needs to be adjusted to in some way, you can also add what's called an amendment to the contract. So common contract amendments in real estate could be to extend the closing date, or to extend the inspection period that we call the due diligence period. You might create an amendment to the contract in that way. You might also need a little more than what's in your standard contract form. Maybe your standard contract form doesn't address everything that either party wants to have addressed. In that case, you might want to attach something called an addendum. You might want to attach an addendum, and an addendum is simply another addition to this contract that will address the specific issue at hand. Contracts are full of deadlines. So there may be a deadline that has a little something attached to it called a time is of the essence clause, or phrasing, shall we say. That's going to create a hard deadline. And if whatever was supposed to happen by that deadline does not occur, then the responsible party may be liable for a breach of contract, which again, we're going to talk about those consequences for a breach of contract coming up here momentarily. All right, now we established that to create a contract, we need those three steps. We need an offer, we need acceptance of the offer, and we need communication of acceptance, ZZ top, back to the other side. Once we do that, we've got contract acceptance. Now, before we get to contract acceptance, we just have an offer. Normally, there's going to be some negotiating between the parties. And while you're negotiating, all that's really in existence is either an offer or a counteroffer. So if I propose an offer and the party I'm proposing this to says, I don't like all of that, I'm going to cross this off. So here's my what? Here's my counteroffer. So they're going to send a counteroffer over to me. A counteroffer is a full rejection of that original offer. We can't go back to it later. We can't breathe life into it. We can't resuscitate it, nothing. It's dead and gone, people, like a skunk in the road. Okay, it's dead and gone forever. Don't try to breathe life into that. It's gross. Kelly, don't even go there. That's nasty. Okay. All right, so we can't revive it later. So what is it? A counteroffer is a full, let's do it in Elaine from Seinfeld, shove. It's a full rejection of the original offer that may not be resuscitated in the future. So you're negotiating back and forth. All you have is an offer. What is an offer really? Nothing. Nothing. Roger Cumby used to do this. You do it with me. Let's add on to it. Roger would say, an offer is nothing but a fluffy clouds of nothingness. Nothingness. They mean nothing until the offer ripens into a contract. Okay, very good. Hopefully you'll be able to remember that. All right, now listen up. If you have let's go back to time is of the essence and talk about it attached to a contract compared to attached to an offer. So a time is of the essence, little tag along there, attached to a contract creates a hard deadline. And if it's not met, whatever that is, that action that's supposed to take place prior to that time is of the essence deadline, then the delaying party may be liable for breach. Let's talk about it as an offer. Time is of the essence attached to an offer really mean not a lot, meaning that the offeror can still revoke their offer anytime prior to that offer ripening into a contract. So we've established two things about an offer. An offer could be rejected, or an offer could be revoked. So an offer can be rejected, an offer may be revoked as well. All offers may be revoked, pulled from the table, just taken off the table anytime before it ripens into a contract. Okay, very good. Now, sometimes people will form a contract and then they want to just give this contract to someone else. They don't want it themselves anymore. They want to give it to someone else. We call that a contract assignment. When would that happen? Sometimes it happens in the business of wholesaling, where you'll have wholesaler investors who are really selling contracts, essentially. That's one way to look at it. Another way might be that, let's say that I'm in this real estate contract and now I've got a dream job that was offered to me a week later after me being in this contract. I might assign this contract to a friend, or maybe my mom who wants to live here and loves the little house that I have under contract. I might want to assign it. Now, note to self, in North Carolina, a real estate contract, you have to have permission for this one, the standard offer to purchase form 2T. You have to have permission from all parties in order to go through with an assignment. So the seller has to agree to that, or vice versa. Okay, very good. Now, so that's assignment. You could also be in a situation where you have a contract, maybe it's for a commercial lease or something like that. Okay, so you have a commercial lease and you want to sell your business, but you've got this building that has your name on the lease. What are we going to do about that? Well, we're going to go talk to the landlord and say, hey, landlord, I am selling my business to George over here. Will you rescind our lease agreement and enter into a new lease agreement with George? So we are substituting the paperwork. We're going to create a new lease. And when we do that, it's going to relieve me, the tenant, the original tenant, of any obligation to that lease. So we're going to substitute a new lease agreement with George in place of mine when I go to sell my business, which includes leasing this particular building. That's called a novation. So to break it down to brass tacks, when it comes to an assignment, we're substituting people. You're going to give the contract to another person. When you're dealing with a novation, you're substituting paper. You're going to substitute one contract for another contract. I like how I said that. I'm going to say it again. In an assignment, you're substituting people. With a novation, you're substituting paper. Excellent. So how might a contract be terminated? A contract can be terminated in a number of ways. One way is to get the job done. Get her done. That's called fulfillment, contract fulfillment. Each party has done what they were supposed to do. They fulfilled the promises contained in that contract document. Or you could terminate a contract via mutual agreement. Everyone agrees to part ways. Or a contract could be terminated by what's called operation of law, because the judge said so. In fact, if it were me on an exam, if there were ever an exam choice 1, 2, 3, 4, where it said because the judge said so, or by court of law, that's what I would pick, because the judge gets the final say, essentially. Or the contract could be terminated because a party breached or broke the contract. Now, as promised, there are consequences. I'm going to tell you about those for breaching a contract. Number one is the party that is harmed by the breach may be entitled to compensatory damages. The root word is compensate. So the party that's been harmed by this breach will be entitled to be compensated for money they spent while the contract was in place. So they're going to be made whole. They're going to be compensated. In a real estate sales contract, typically that money would coincide or be tied to the inspection period. So if the seller is trying to breach the contract, the buyer will be entitled to be compensated for money they spent during the contract time, money on an appraisal, money on title search, money on home inspections, money on a survey, money on a septic inspection. It goes on and on. I mean, it could be up to like $2,000, $2,500, really. So that's compensatory damages. That's number one. Number two, the breaching party, the party that's harmed by the breach, may be entitled to liquidated damages. And this is money that is going to be received due to this breach. In a real estate contract, in North Carolina anyway, the seller, it outlines it in the standard offer to purchase form 2T, that the seller will be entitled to liquidated damages if the buyer breaches the contract. Liquidated damages are considered monetary, which would be the earnest money and the due diligence fee. So that's what the seller gets in North Carolina. You might encounter consequential damages, which in real estate would be pretty rare. That's when maybe you're going to sue for pain and suffering, something like that. But next, specific performance as a consequence for breach of contract is definitely very testable. Same with liquidated, same with compensatory. Specific performance is where one party sues the other for what? For getting that party that's trying to breach the contract to do what the contract says specifically. So in North Carolina, if the seller breaches the contract, the buyer is allowed to sue for specific performance. Now, do we mean song and dance performance? No, we mean, hey, seller who's trying to breach the contract, hey, seller, perform what the contract says you're supposed to do, or do what the contract says you're supposed to do. Well, what does a real estate sales contract says the seller is supposed to do? Sell me the property. Oh, exactly. So the buyer is suing the seller to make them to force the sale. with specific performance. And lastly, a breach remedy could be rescission. So there could be something that's occurred, something that's happened that will allow the buyer to back out of the contract, to rescind the contract, to decide that it's going to be a void contract. Why? Because maybe we've discovered a mistake of fact, a misrepresentation, some way one of the parties has been harmed. Another example might be if there's a cloud on title that can't be removed. Maybe there's an encroachment. An encroachment will render both parcels unmarketable until we figure it out. Well, if it can't be remedied, I need a remedy. If it can't be remedied, then the buyer will rescind that contract. It's going to create avoidable situation. See how it all ties together? They're going to rescind that contract, rendering it void, rendering it unenforceable. There also can be some rights of rescission that are built into contract language. And we know from previous units that when we're dealing with a condominium, for example, that when it comes to a brand new condominium complex, the buyer has a 7-day right of rescission period where they can back out of that contract without penalty. They get all their money back. Same with the timeshare. We learned the 5-5-5 jazz hand timeshare rules. One of the 5s meaning that the buyer for a timeshare has 5 days to back out of that contract without penalty. Very good. Well, that concludes our Unit 9 review. I hope that you have found this helpful to hear it presented to you in perhaps a different way. Remember, you can go back and listen to these. Just put me right in your ear while you're walking, cooking, doing chores, folding laundry, whatever, living life. Whatever you're trying to do to squeeze this course in the middle of your busy schedule, your busy life for sure. I appreciate you taking the time to watch, and don't forget to click that subscribe button so you never miss out on another review. See you next time for Unit 10.